guys, it's FPS Trollywood here. Today I'm going to be talking to you guys about the attack helicopters in Battlefield 4. I'm going to be going over the all three types, the defensive features on the attack heli, the offensive features for the pilot, the offensive features of the gunner optics, maps, and any issues with the attack helicopters. So, just to get us started here, you'll see me here using the Hydra rockets. That'll be my favorite, but I'll go over all that in due time here. I guess to start off, there's first off, when you're gonna be running the attack helicopter, you gotta keep in mind what kind of map you're gonna be on here. So far, due to multitude of reasons, my favorite runs for running the attack helicopter, or my favorite maps for running the attack helicopter, are the city maps, Dawnbreaker and Siege of Shanghai. There's a lot of reasons for that, which I'll get into later, but those are just my favorite. Just due to cover, I guess, would be the primary reason. Being able to hide behind things from stingers. But, you know, in the open maps, you're pretty vulnerable no matter where you go. So anyways, there's three types of the attack helicopter. There's the Z-10W, there's the AH-1Z Viper, and there's the Mi-28 Havoc. And to be honest with you guys, I know in Battlefield 3 we had the Havoc and the Viper, and that they had their various characteristics, their different handling and stuff like that. You know, the gunner weapons had, for a while there was a bit of a glitch where the gunner for the Havoc had way more packed way more punch than the Viper, and there was always like an accuracy difference too, it seemed like. But in Battlefield 4, I really get the impression that they're all the same. I don't really get the impression that there's any handling or acceleration or any different hitboxes on any of them. They seem to be pretty much all the same, just with different shapes, you know, geometric features. But so that said, it doesn't necessarily really matter which helicopter. If you prefer one, it seems like it'll be purely superficial preference. And that's really all I have to say about that. So the next thing I was going to go over was the defensive features. You have the flares, you have ECM, and then you have stealth, and you have the gyro feature. And these aren't necessarily all in the same category. Stealth or flares and ECM are interchangeable along with extinguisher. I don't really like extinguisher too much, but that's just me. So the flares and ECM, flares, as you'll be familiar with from Battlefield 3, they're pretty much an instant. You know, if missiles already been fired at you, it'll distract it or whatever. They seem to be fairly consistent unless something's fired from really close range. But other than that, they seem to be pretty consistent. ECM is, I got the impression that it's the better perk, provided that you use it the right way. It does seem to be a bit broken, in that if you use it after a missile's been fired at you, they're pretty inconsistent about working. So I would definitely recommend, that if you're going to use the ECM, that you remember to flare it as soon as possible when you hear something locking you. The benefit of ECM being that it'll give you time to get to cover before they fire the next missile. Because as you guys are familiar with, stingers in this game are pretty much an instant reload. Like, they're really fast reloads. So if you flare and then try to run for cover, that person probably has enough time to get off another stinger before you're behind cover. So that's the reason that I prefer the ECM, but you just have to remember that you have to fire it early, well in advance of something being fired. So that said, you spend a lot of your time in the attack heli hiding. Stealth is one of the perks available and it has the bonus of making it harder for someone to lock you. It takes a little longer for them to lock on, but once they've locked onto you, everything else is pretty much the same. So that's really the only benefit, is that it takes them longer to lock on. So don't think that it's going to make the missile impact less or anything like that. It doesn't. So just keep that in mind. The gyro feature is basically when you get hit by things, you tend to tip over, especially if they get a mobility hit. And the gyro feature basically just makes it easier for you to keep your heli upright. And there's even some inconsistency with that, so I would, expect it to be saving your life or anything. Yeah, so that's really all I have to say about those defensive features. I prefer ECM and gyro, so that's just my preference. I feel like I can use ECM to, kind of, I guess it replaces stealth a little bit in my mind. That's just my preference. So, let's see, offensive features for the pilot. You'll see me using the tow missile, and that's just one of the options for the primary. The tow missile seems a bit misguided for them to put it in there as an option, just because it doesn't really seem that effective. I think the primary reason that it's not very effective is because it's really tough to tell your range to target, and versus where your missile's at, and it also means that, as with any of the wire-guided missile systems, you have to steer it, and the only way to steer it when you're the pilot of the attack heli is to turn your entire attack heli. Just so it seems a little weird in that regard, I guess. So let's see here. The other option for the pilot is the heat seekers, and obviously those are great for taking down any air vehicles, jets, etc. I had posted one clip, side note here, that where I had actually managed to tow missile a jet, and it did work, but it's definitely not something you can guarantee or be consistent about. So my preference is going to be heat seekers, pretty much consistently here. For the rockets, you guys are all familiar with that. There's 3 types in this game. There's Hydra, Zuni, and Smart Rockets. And basically, the Hydras I would compare to the same rocket pods that we had in Battlefield 3. And, the damage is not necessarily the same exact, but they're fairly similar. Zuni rockets are supposed to be, you don't get as many of them, but they pack a bigger punch damage-wise than the Hydras do. They seem to do about 25 damage to air vehicles. And unfortunately, I'm estimating on all my damages here because it's tough to get consistent hits and, exact readings and stuff like that. I was really hoping that Synthic would have posted the vehicle damage stats by now, but they haven't still, even though they've been saying coming soon on them for like a month now. So I was really hoping for that, but no luck so far. Hopefully that'll come soon. But just keep in mind that there are not as many of them, and they don't seem to be quite as accurate as the Hydras. So I prefer the Hydras of those two. The Smart Rockets, I guess you could say those are like, I guess they're comparable to like the training wheels of the rocket pods. They basically, anytime you fire near an armored target within a certain tolerance, they will guide themselves into that armored target. And among the 10 smart rockets that you get, they deal a total of about 60 damage to like a tank or something. They may do slightly different damages to things like the boat, but it's just a matter of preference, I guess. The one thing that I've noted about them that I don't like is that when you're facing an air vehicle, they don't really seem to register very well hitting the air vehicle. So just keep that in mind. yeah, the of the 3 types of rockets, I definitely prefer the Hydras because they do more total damage than the other 3. Although the Zunis seem to have a little bit better impact against air vehicles, just because they pack 25 damage to that air vehicle in general. And it seems like the rockets, you know, it seems like their hitboxes against other helicopters and stuff like that may be inconsistent. But I'll go into that a little bit later. So onto the gunner. The offensive gunner weapons basically are you get to choose between the laser-guided missile and the TV missile. And the laser-guided missile has the advantage of being, lock on, fire, and it's like the HVM2 in that regard. You have to hold it on your target. So if they flare or whatever, you can lock back onto them, and it should still hit, provided it hasn't hit something else. So I guess just keep that in mind when you're choosing between the two. The TV missiles, unfortunately, they nerfed the reload time on those. They're a little easier to control than they were in BF3, but they do way less damage, and with the new reload times and stuff, they're just I don't know, it's a little frustrating. All they do is a mobility hit to pretty much anything you hit. So I guess just keep that in mind. Choose them. But really, those two don't. Really, the best use for the TV missiles I've found is just taking out armor that you need to stay far away from, namely the AA. I pretty much save my TV missiles for the AA, provided my pilot gives me the, option that I have communications with. Let's see. So gunner optics. There's zoom. There's the IR&V. There's thermal. Those are pretty much the same as they are on the sights for the weapons, for the guns. And honestly,